Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, today we'll start our chapter which is related to portfolio theory. It is actually chapter number 7 from Charles P. Jones Investment Analysis and Management book. And as we have discussed different aspect of risk and return in the previous chapter, in this chapter we are specifically discussing and understanding the meaning and calculation of expected return and risk measure for individual security. Secondly, we will try to recognize what it means to talk about modern portfolio theory and calculate portfolio returns and risk measure as formulated by Markowitz and understand how diversification works. So basically the main emphasis is that we will try to help you out in designing a portfolio which will try to maximize return and minimize your risk or diversify your risk. So basic जो हम बात करें ना यहाँ पे portfolio theory की, तो पहला चीज़ तो हम ये देखेंगे कि आप जब कभी भी इन्वेस्टमेंट करना चाहते हैं तो इंडिविजुअल सिक्योरिटी की रिस्क और रिटर्न आप किस तरीके से डिटरमिन करते हैं। फिर हम ये देखते हैं कि अगर हम मॉडर्न पोर्टफोलियो की बात करते हैं तो मॉडर्न पोर्टफोलियो किस तरीके से बनता है और आप किस तरीके से मॉडर्न पोर्टफोलियो बनाते हैं। फिर जब आप एक पोर्टफोलियो बना रहे हैं और जो गाइडलाइन मार्कोविस ने दी है उनकी बेसिस के ऊपर हम ये देखेंगे कि हम जो है वो किस तरीके से इंडिविजुअल सिक्योर जब पोर्टफोलियो डिज़ाइन करते हैं तो किस तरीके से हम रिस्क एंड रिटर्न को देखते हैं। और लास्टली जो हम डिस्कशन करेंगे दैट वाज एक्चुअली अबाउट डाइवर्सिफिकेशन कि क्या डाइवर्सिफिकेशन किस तरीके से आपके रिस्क को मिनिमाइज कर देती है इन अ पोर्टफोलियो। Now investment decisions, like first of all when we start discussing about portfolio theory, the main emphasis or main decision were regarding the investment, that how the investors will take their investment decision. So first of all they'll see the uncertainty of the environment or uncertainty of different securities or different investments, because it's very important while you are giving your money or you are investing your money in certain securities. So obviously you are concerned about their uncertainty, that whether you will be able to recover that amount or not. So this is called as risk as well, because nobody can predict the future environment with 100% certainty. So uncertainty is always there, but still there are certain things which we have to consider in order to assess the uncertainty of a certain investment. Then another aspect is focus on expected returns. When you are making investment or when you are putting your money in certain securities, stocks, or any other kind of financial product or financial instruments, so you will see the expected return you will be getting from that investment. Like estimates of future returns needed to consider and manage risk. These estimates are actually different for different type of securities. Like when we talk about common stock, so the returns from common stock are might be from dividend, it might be from the sale of that common stock in the future, from which you will get capital gain or capital loss. Or when we talk about any debt instrument, so you will be seeing that what amount of interest you will be getting that from that debt instrument, and with how much time period you will be getting that amount back when you are investing that amount into that security. So we have to ascertain the return for these securities, because we have to manage risk, we have to diversify risk. And as we are planning to make a portfolio, so obviously return and risk are both very important, and you have to ascertain both things. The main goal of is to reduce risk without affecting returns. As you when you are about to design a portfolio by investment, so the main emphasis is that you want to reduce risk, and this risk can be reduced by building an effective portfolio which will help to diversify risk. It will decrease risk by spreading it out, diversifying it out. So the main purpose of developing or building a portfolio is to minimize risk and maximize return. अगर आप देखें ना, जब हम पोर्टफोलियो थ्योरी या पोर्टफोलियो की जब हम बात करते हैं, तो सबसे पहले इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग जो है ना वो ये है कि आप ये देखते हैं कि आप कोई भी अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट आप कर रहे हैं तो उसके बीच में अनसर्टेनिटी कितनी है। मतलब अगर आप कहीं पे पैसा डाल रहे हैं तो उस पैसे का जो आप पैसे में कितनी उसको आपको रिस्क बेयर करना पड़ रहा है, और जितना ज़्यादा रिस्क बेयर करना पड़ता है उतना ज़्यादा रिटर्न आता है। लेकिन उसके साथ साथ एक आपकी रिस्क भी है कि आपको ये हो सकता है कि वो सिक्योरिटी, वो पैसा जो आपने डाला हुआ है आपको ना मिले। सो कम कहाँ कहीं पे आप कुछ रिस्क बेयर करते हो, कहीं पे कुछ ज़्यादा रिस्क बेयर करते हो, तो उसके ऊपर आप देखते हो। फिर सेकंड चीज़ आप ये देखते हो कि अगर कहीं भी आप इन्वेस्टमेंट करे हो, चाहे वो किसी कॉमन स्टॉक में इन्वेस्ट करे हो या कहीं पे किसी बॉन्ड्स वगैरह में इन्वेस्टमेंट करे हो, तो उनसे रिलेटेड रिटर्न्स आपको क्या मिल रहे हैं। क्योंकि रिटर्न्स को देखना इसलिए ज़रूरी है क्योंकि फिर आप उससे रिलेटेड जो भी रिस्क होता है, रिटर्न भी आप देख रहे होते हैं, सिक्योरिटीज का रिस्क भी देख रहे होते हो, और फिर क्योंकि आपको रिटर्न जब पता होगा तो आप उसके लिए रिस्क जो है वो मैनेज कर सकते हो। तो आपका मेन एम्फेसिस जब आप इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे होते हो तो आपका ये होता है कि आप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अपने रिटर्न को बढ़ाओ और रिस्क को कम से कम करो, लेकिन उसको इस तरीके से कम करो कि आपके रिटर्न के ऊपर उसका कोई बैड इम्पैक्ट ना आए या रिटर्न बहुत ज़्यादा कॉम्प्रोमाइज ना हो। सो ये वाला गोल जो है वो आप पोर्टफोलियो के थ्रू जो है वो कर सकते हैं कि आप एक ऐसा पोर्टफोलियो बनाए। पोर्टफोलियो मींस कि बंच ऑफ सिक्योरिटीज बनाए जिसमें कुछ सिक्योरिटीज में रिस्क अगर ज्यादा है तो कुछ सिक्योरिटीज आप इसलिए ऐसे ले लेते हो जिससे रिस्क कम होता है। फिर वो इस तरीके से आपस में एक दूसरे को कंपनसेट करते हैं कि आपका रिस्क जो होता है, वो ओवरऑल रिस्क जो होता है वो मिनिमाइज हो जाता है और आपका रिटर्न जो है वो मैक्सिमाइज हो जाता है। इसी चीज को हम कहते हैं कि डाइवर्सिफिकेशन ऑफ रिस्क। आपका रिस्क जो है वो सिक्योरिटीज की कम्बिनेशन की वजह से कम हो जाता है, क्योंकि अगर एक सिक्योरिटी से ज्यादा रिस्क आपको आ रहा है तो दूसरी से सिक्योरिटी मिनिमम रिस्क के साथ उसको कंपेंसेट कर रही है। सो इस तरीके से एक आपका पोर्टफोलियो बन जाता है और आपका रिस्क जो है वो स्प्रेड आउट हो जाता है या डाइवर्सिफाई हो जाता है। Now, when we are dealing with uncertainty, first of all, it should be certain that risk is an expected return will not be realized. Like the risk is, or we can say that there are certain risk involved in that. So the risk is the concept that certain return cannot be realized in the future, or it might be less than you have expected. So investor must think about return distribution, not just a single return. Return distribution means that you have to see the probabilities of return, that how much probability is there that you will be getting certain amount of return, and how much probability is there is that you will be getting that much return. So this is called as return distribution. Like you have to to see the market, you have to forecast certain situation, you have to see the ground realities, and based upon that you will make a distribution which shows that how much chances are there that you will get certain types of return. So these are called as probabilities weights outcome, that these are the probabilities which are assigned to each possible outcome to create a distribution. Like you have when you are assessing returns for a security, so you have to develop a probabilities for certain type of outcome. Like 10% probability is there that you will be getting -5 return, or 50% probability is there that you will be getting you will be getting -1 return, or 16% probability is there that you will be getting 10% return. So these are the probabilities, and these are the probability weights which are assigned to each kind of return, and these are based upon certain data you have gathered from different kind of sources. It might be the market, it might be a financial analyst, it might be from any other source. So it can be it can be from any other source, but you have developed certain probabilities in order to get an expected return from your for your securities. And it can be discrete or it can be continuous. Like if you have learned in statistics, so we have two type of distribution. One is your continuous distribution and the other one is discrete distribution. So you can develop a discrete distribution or you can develop a continuous distribution. discrete distribution is there, that you randomly take certain points in the points, and based upon that you will derive the data. But continuous distribution is that you will be getting or covering the whole area of the of your distribution, and getting information for each and every variable in that. So you will take ranges from this point to this point, and based upon that you will be getting the data. So this distribution might be discrete, or this distribution might be continuous. So both from both ends you actually try to find out the expected return. अब इसमें हम देखें ना, जब हम अनसर्टेनिटी की बात करते हैं तो रिस्क जो होता है वो उसका मतलब ये होता है कि जो आपने अज्यूम किया हुआ है कि इतना रिटर्न होगा, तो वो एक्चुअली असल में हो नहीं पाता। रियलाइज्ड का मतलब नहीं है कि एक्चुअली में वो हो नहीं पाता, क्योंकि हम जब फॉरकास्ट करे होते हैं, हम जब फ्यूचर के लिए अपना एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न डिटर्मिन करे होते हैं, तो हम वो एक रिटर्न नहीं देखते, हम मुख्तलिफ सोर्सेज के थ्रू मुख्तलिफ जगह से आप इंफॉर्मेशन लेते हैं, और आप एक प्रोबेबिलिटी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन बनाते हैं और वेट देते हैं कि आपका क्या चांसेस हैं कि कितना परसेंट रिटर्न होगा, क्या चांसेस हैं कि कितना कितना परसेंट रिटर्न कितना होगा। तो आप वो 100% जो है प्रोबेबिलिटीज के साथ आप इसको जो है ना वो मैच करते हो कि एक 100% में कितनी परसेंट प्रोबेबिलिटी है कि कितना रिटर्न होगा। सो आप उसकी प्रॉपर एक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन बना लेते हो, और उस डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के फिर बेसिस के ऊपर आप एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न जो है वो कैलकुलेट करते हो। अब यहाँ पे डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जो बात हुई है, तो आपकी जो ये डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन होती है वो डिस्क्रीट भी हो सकती है, कंटिन्यूस भी हो सकती है। डिस्क्रीट जो होती है ना वो सिंपली ये होती है कि आप कुछ कुछ पॉइंट्स के ऊपर आप इंफॉर्मेशन जो है ना वो बता देते हो कि जी इतने परसेंट चांस ये है, इतने परसेंट चांस ये है। लेकिन जब आप कंटिन्यूस डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन पढ़ते हो तो उसके बीच में फिर आप ये करते हो कि 0 से 10% चांस जो है वो आपका ये है, फिर 10 से 20% चांस जो है ये है, ये वाला रिटर्न होगा। तो एक कंटिन्यूस डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन होती है जो पूरे एरिया को कवर करी होती है। सो आपकी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन डिस्क्रीट भी हो सकती है और कंटिन्यूस भी हो सकती है, लेकिन दोनों की बेसिस के ऊपर फिर आप जो है वो एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न जो है वो डिटर्मिन करते हो। फॉर्मूलाज थोड़े से चेंज है, लेकिन आप दोनों के बेसिस के ऊपर फिर आप रिटर्न जो है वो एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न और जो आपका स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन है, रिस्क है, वो डिटर्मिन करते हो। Now, how to determine the expected return and standard deviation? So, first of all, we will see the probability distribution, and certain probabilities that how will you get how much return you will be getting, and how much the probability that you will get that return. There is a 10% probability that you will be getting minus 15 return, 20% probability that you will be getting minus 3% return, 40% probability that you will be getting 9% return, 20% probability that you will be getting 20%, 21% return, and 10% probability that you will be getting 33% return. So we will multiply Ri with Pi. By doing this and by taking the total of this, we will add minus 036 plus minus 042 plus minus 033 and deduct minus 015 and minus 06. We will get 9%. So there is 9%. The 9% is the expected return of this BW stock, that you will be getting 9% return in the future. Another aspect is that we have to determine the risk for the securities, and for measuring risk we will be using standard deviation. The formula we use for standard deviation is given over here. We have to determine the variance and the under roots variance is actually standard deviation, and actually standard deviation is a statistical measure of variability of a distribution around its mean. Like as we have discussed, that expected return is the weighted average of a probable outcome. So we will get the average of the probable outcome. Now standard deviation will suggest us that how your expected return would be different from realized return. Like जब हम बात करते हैं ना रिस्क की, तो रिस्क जो है ना वो हम स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन के थ्रू मेजर करते हैं, और ये वेरिएंस का हाफ होता है। इसको जो हम वेरिएंस कैलकुलेट करने के बाद उसका अंडर रूट लेते हैं, तो आपको जो है वो स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन मिल जाता है। अब इसमें जो स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन एक्चुअली हमें ये बताता है कि आपका जो एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न आपने फाइंड आउट किया है, आपका जो एक्चुअल रिटर्न आएगा वो उससे कितना वेरिएट करेगा। जितना ज़्यादा वेरिएट करेगा उतना ज़्यादा आपकी स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन होगी और उतनी ज़्यादा आपका रिस्क है कि आपका जो एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न है वो कितना मतलब कितना ज़्यादा रियलाइज होगा, या जो एक्चुअल रिटर्न आएगा वो एक्सपेक्टेड रिटर्न से कितना कम या ज़्यादा होगा। सो इसलिए हम इसको कहते हैं कि स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन जो है वो रिस्क का मेजर होता है। इसके अलावा जो ये हम फॉर्मूला देख रहे हैं ये डिस्क्रीट डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के लिए है। Now, how to determine the expected return and standard deviation? This is the same stock BW. The first column is of individual returns. These are actually different returns, and PI are the probability of these return. Then we have multiplied RI with PI to determine the expected return, that is actually 9%. The last column is actually have done for measuring or for calculating standard deviation. That is, we have deducted expected R from individual RI value and they have taken the square of that, and after that we have multiplied it with a PI, with the individual PI. For first we have multiply it with 0.10, and for second we have multiplied it by 2.20, and so on. The same process goes on. By summing up we will get the value 0.01728. This is the value of variance, because for standard deviation we have to take the square root of this value, and in the next slide we have taken the square root, so we will get 13.15%. So standard deviation of this distribution or this security is 13.15%. Like expected return is 9% and standard deviation is 13.15%. Now, another important aspect of this standard deviation is that we can calculate coefficient of variance with the help of this expected return and standard deviation. So the ratio of standard deviation of a distribution to the mean of that distribution, it is actually a measure of relative risk when we are comparing different securities. So in that case we can use coefficient of variation, which will give us a relative risk of certain securities. So how we will calculate this coefficient of variance? We will take standard deviation divided by R, that is expected return of that security. For this specific case, the standard deviation is 13.15 divided by the expected return, that is 9%. So we will get 1.46. As these values are in percentage, so we will take take these value in points. Like for standard deviation, which was 13.15%, we have taken 0.1315, and expected return was 9%, we have taken 0.09. So we get the value of 1.46. So this is actually relative risk of this BW security, and it will be helpful when we take other type of securities and we compare different securities. So in that case it would be helpful. Now, determining expected return for continuous distribution, so we will do it with the help of this formula. Over here, R bar is the expected return for the asset, Ri is the return for the ith observation, and N is the total number of observation. So, because in the continuous distribution we have to consideration the whole population, and so in that case we will use this formula. In case of standard deviation, we will use this formula, and as you have seen that we haven't used probability over here. We have divided it by n by simply taking the square root of r minus r square, and the whole calculation, and after that we have divided it by n and taken under root, because we have to take the standard deviation. So we use this formula for continuous distribution when we are calculating standard deviation. Now, determining the portfolio of expected return. So we will use this formula. R bar P is the expected return for the portfolio. Weight is the weight investment proportion for the jth investment in the portfolio. R bar is actually RJ, sorry. R bar J is the expected return of the jth asset. M is the total number of asset in the portfolio. So we will use this formula for determining the expected return for a portfolio. So when we have to determine the standard deviation for the portfolio, so we will use this formula where our WJ is the weight investment proportion for the jth asset in the portfolio. WK is the weight investment proportion for the kth asset in the portfolio, and pi JK is the covariance between returns for the jth and kth asset in the portfolio. So with the help of this formula, we can determine the risk for a portfolio. So another thing is the covariance, which is actually um, 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 is written as pi jk is equal to standard deviation of j, standard deviation of k, and r is the correlation coefficient between jth and kth asset in the portfolio. And another thing is a correlation coefficient. Actually, correlation coefficient is a standardized statistical measure of the linear relationship between two variables. As we are making a portfolio in which we have two securities, and we have to find out relationship of these securities, that whether if there is increase in the return of and one security, what would be the impact of that on the other security. So that is called as the correlation coefficient. And correlation coefficient is actually ranges from -1 to +1. It's when we say it's a -1, we can say perfectly negative correlation. Through zero, when we say zero, so it means there is no correlation between securities, and if there is +1, that we can say that there is perfect positive correlation. When there is a perfect negative correlation, so if there is 10% increase in one security, return of one security, there would be 10% decrease in the return of second security. When there is zero correlation, so there is no relationship, there is no impact of increase or decrease in both type of securities. But when there is perfect positive correlation, so it shows that when there is 10% increase in one security, so the other security will also increase with 10%. Now when we say that risk reduction in portfolio, so first of all, we can consider that if we are selecting securities in which risk sources are independent, that the different securities have different sources of risk. So in that case, the larger the number of securities, the smaller the exposure to any particular risk. This is called as insurance policy principle, and it only issue is how many securities to hold. Like देखें, जब हम इसमें बात करते हैं ना रिस्क रिडक्शन की, तो हम कहते हैं कि अगर कोई सिक्योरिटीज का एक पोर्टफोलियो बना रहे हैं और हर सिक्योरिटी का जो रिस्क है वो डिफरेंट है, मतलब वो एक दूसरे के साथ रिलेटेड नहीं है, तो जितनी ज़्यादा आप उस तरह की सिक्योरिटीज अपने पास इकट्ठी करेंगे पोर्टफोलियो में, उतना कम जो है ना वो आपका रिस्क होगा, और इस चीज़ को हम इंश्योरेंस प्रिंसिपल कहते हैं. लेकिन यहाँ पर सिर्फ एक इशू एक ये होता है कि आपने ये डिसाइड करना होता है कि एटलीस्ट आपको कितनी सिक्योरिटी उस पोर्टफोलियो में होल्ड करनी चाहिए कि आपका जो रिस्क है वो मिनिमाइज हो जाए और आप जो है मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट हासिल कर सकें. Now, another important point which has to be discussed is risk reduction in portfolio, that how we can reduce risk in portfolios. First of all, random diversification. Random diversification is actually, or also called as naive diversification. It refers to the act of randomly diversifying without regard to how security returns are related to each other. And investors simply select relatively large number of securities randomly. The proverbial throw a dart at the Wall Street Journal page showing stock quotes when you are only randomly selecting by putting a dot on the securities which are written on the Wall Street page, the journal page. So this is actually aspect in which you can select the securities without considering different other characteristics. But as the number of securities are increased in the portfolio, the risk is reduced, but the marginal risk reduction gets smaller and smaller as more securities are added. Marginal risk is the risk which is reduced due to addition of increase security in the portfolio. So this marginal risk actually reduces once you start increasing more securities in the portfolio. But a large number of securities is actually not required for significant risk reduction. Like as also have to consider that you don't need very large number of securities in order to reduce risk, but you have to carefully select securities by considering certain aspects of the securities. So based upon that you can reduce risk. Another aspect is also that you can also diversify your portfolio by investing in international market. There are many other uh, uh, securities which are offered in different countries, and they are actually open to investors world over. So and when you are investing in certain kind of countries or in different countries, so obviously you can get the diversification benefits from them as well. You can also get benefit from exchange rate. You can also benefit from in their interest rate. They can also benefit from their political aspect. So you can also diversify your risk by investing in different countries as well. Now we can see the risk, portfolio risk and diversification relationship with the help of this diagram. We can see that market risk is there. You can decrease the non-systematic risk with the help of portfolio. Now on the vertical axis we have portfolio risk, and on the horizontal axis we have number of securities in the portfolio. As we can see that with the increase in the number of securities in the portfolio, your portfolio risk would be decline. But as you increase more and more securities in the portfolio, the amount of risk decline would be decreased. Like we have discussed that marginal risk will be decreased or reduced when you will increase more and more securities in the portfolio. Now we will discuss Markowitz diversification, that how Markowitz have suggested that we should select our portfolio. So according to Markowitz, they have suggested non-random diversification. Like you don't have to select randomly securities, like as we have discussed previously, that you don't have to consider different characteristic of security and just make a random selection of your portfolio. So, as contrast to that, Markowitz have suggested that you have to select your securities for a portfolio non-randomly, and you have to actively manage that measure and manage the portfolio risk. Like you have to see that what type of securities are there, and what type of returns they are giving you, what type of standard deviation or risk are associated with that, what is the correlation between that, what is coefficient of variance and the covariance of these different securities. So Markowitz has suggested that we have to investigate relationship between portfolio securities before making a decision to invest, and that's something very much important, because when you are selecting securities in a portfolio, and if they are very negatively related to each other, so the benefit of a portfolio could not be not be attained. So you have to carefully investigate the relationship between securities which are entered into the portfolio. and because we want to take advantage of expected return and risk for individual securities, and how securities return move together. So you have to take advantage of both of them, their expected returns and their movement of in against each other. So we have to take advantage from both of these things. लाइक अगर हम बात करते हैं ना मार्कोविस की, तो मार्कोविस आपको सजेस्ट करता है कि आपको जो सिक्योरिटीज पोर्टफोलियो में रखनी है उनको रैंडमली सेलेक्ट नहीं करना, बल्कि उनको बहुत केयरफुली आपने तरीके से उसको अपने हिसाब किताब से और प्रॉपर तरीके से मैनेज करके सेलेक्ट करना है। आप ये देखना है कि कुछ जो सिक्योरिटीज आपकी आप अपने पोर्टफोलियो में डाल रही हैं उनकी आपस में क्या रिलेशनशिप है। ये ना हो कि अगर उनमें से आप जो है एक बहुत ज़्यादा इंक्रीज हो रहा है तो दूसरा बहुत ज़्यादा डिक्रीज हो रहा है, और या एक दूसरे के साथ बहुत नेगेटिवली वो रिलेटेड है, या अगर परफेक्टली रिलेटेड नहीं है तब भी वो बेनिफिट आपको नहीं मिल सकता पोर्टफोलियो में, जब तक उसके बीच में जो है ना वो आपकी परफेक्ट से कम कोरिलेशन ना हो। तो आपने ये चीज़ को इसको देखना है। फिर आपका जो मार्कोविस है उसमें वो ये देखता है कि को इंडिविजुअल सिक्योरिटीज कितने रिटर्न दे रही हैं, और फिर इन दोनों में आपस में क्या रिलेशनशिप है, किस तरीके से वो आपस में मूव करती हैं। तो उन तमाम चीज़ों का बेनिफिट हासिल करने के लिए आप एक केयरफुल मैनेजमेंट से एक पोर्टफोलियो बनाते हैं।